Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Caroline and I work on community at Modular. Today is our Ask Us Anything session on the Qualcomm acquisition. We got a ton of questions submitted in advance, more than we can possibly get to in a 1-hour session. So if you don't hear your question answered today, we will follow up in our forum at forum.modular.com. And keep dropping questions in the chat too during today's session. We'll mix in some of those questions live as well. Joining me today are Chris Lattner, co-founder and CEO of Modular, and now also EVP of Advanced AI Software and Platforms at Qualcomm, Tim Davis, co-founder and president of Modular, and now also SVP and GM of Modular at Qualcomm. And we also have Durga Malladi, EVP and GM of Technology Planning, Edge Solutions, and Data Center at Qualcomm. So I'm super excited to welcome these folks to the stage. Chris, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, hey, Caroline. Hey, everybody. It's nice to see you all. I'm super excited to kick this off. There's lots of questions we've been asked. Lots of them were predictable, but some of them weren't. And so it's great to dive in. As you know, I've been building a lot of things for many years, and Modular is very dear to me. And so the opportunity to join Qualcomm was something that we weren't expecting, actually. But when we played into it and leaned into it, we realized that it was a big deal. And the fundamental thing that we came to believe and that we're so excited about is that joining Qualcomm means that we can pursue our mission. We can move even faster. In this fast-moving world of AI, we can go and grow much bigger, much bolder, and we can actually lean in. And so Tim and I discussed, we decided this was the right thing to do, and then we leapt for it. And so now we just finally closed last week, and we're executing faster than ever before. And so I'm very excited to join up with Durga and with many other leaders in the team. And I think that the future of compute is even more exciting than it was a week ago. So Durga, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks everyone. And it's really awesome to have Chris, Tim, and the rest of the Modular team join Qualcomm. As we indicated in our Investor Day just a few months back, actually last month, 1.5 months back, we are in the midst of our next steps in our journey beyond what we articulated earlier in our diversification strategy. And we kind of take a look at the future of Qualcomm beyond what we have in our existing businesses. It's all about what we are doing in the data center space and physical AI with agentic AI. There's a liberal sprinkling of AI across every single product that we are involved in. And I couldn't be more excited to actually have Modular team join us on this, because this is going to be a journey in which we need absolutely the best of the software that we want out there. And the more I talk to Chris and Tim, I'm totally convinced this is going to be an exciting journey for us. So I'm looking forward to all the things that we're going to do together over the next few years.
Amazing, thank you. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. We're going to start with this question. Is Modular's focus going to shift towards more attention into integrating Qualcomm's hardware? Is this going to interfere with support for other hardware? Chris, you want to take this one?
Well, it's actually pretty funny when you look at this, because we haven't announced any support for Qualcomm hardware at all. So just for context, today we support NVIDIA, AMD, and Apple Silicon. But it is actually fair to infer that we've been working with Qualcomm for quite some time. So the initial focus for us is data center, but as you know, Qualcomm is very strong in laptops and phones and many other devices. And so one of the exciting things about this journey, though, is that while we'll continue to expand to support lots of different Qualcomm hardware, we're not giving up NVIDIA, AMD, and many other things. And so we have a big event next week called ModCon. Please tune in if you haven't. We'll be significantly expanding our hardware portfolio. I'm very excited about that. Heterogeneous compute now has a software platform. But I think that also, again, we have not announced anything, but I'm very excited about supporting Qualcomm hardware as well.
Awesome. Our next question. Will Mojo be open source, but Max not completely?
Tim, do you wanna talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, hey everyone, great to be here. Great to see everyone. Thank you for all the lovely well wishes in the chat. Yeah, look, I think we're going to have a lot to say about this next week. I think we've remained committed, and I think we've been very consistent with the commitment on open sourcing Mojo for actually now, I think almost many years. We've said this, so you'll begin to see I think you'll be very excited about next week. If you aren't already have ModCon tuned in to live stream, please make sure you bookmark it. There'll be a lot there. And similarly with Max, we have a lot of announcements next week coming with Max. I think we also have, and for folks who are on the nightly version of Mojo, you'll also be pretty excited about the upcoming 1.0, which we'll also have a lot to say about in the next week. So I think, the Qualcomm acquisition has been an incredibly exciting time for us, but the amount of stuff we've been shipping and building and working on in the background, I think, is going to be revealed particularly next week. So please tune in for it. I'm probably unfairly teasing everyone there, but that's
well, it's funny. It's funny timing. Durga, do you want to? Why is this important and interesting to Qualcomm? Why does having Mojo out there help Qualcomm?
Yeah, so I was going to actually find the right time to talk a little bit more about it. So, for those in the audience who are familiar with what Qualcomm had and still continues to have before Modular joined, our philosophy has always been about we are not an AI model creator. We don't have a vertical solution. What we have is a horizontal platform that scales across everything from doorbells in the devices space all the way towards data center racks. But we need to make sure that we are in a position to ingest any framework, any runtime, map it to any of our processors. And that's kind of an open mentality that we've always had. And so when you kind of take a look at what the Modular team has done in terms of compiling that, it's exactly the same philosophy if you think about it. It's actually the flip side of it, which is it can run on any hardware, any third-party hardware. It doesn't have to be from one company. It doesn't have to be the CPU or the GPU or the NPU. It's all of the above. So in that sense, it's perfectly complementary if you kind of look at it from our side. We ingest any kind of a software. They came in with the approach of running on any hardware. So it was kind of perfect in that sense in trying to put this whole story together. So the openness portion of it continues to remain an important aspect of how we see the offering moving forwards. And we alluded to this in our Investor Day as well when we said we intend to keep it open.
Yeah, well, and one of the things I think is a shared belief is that the data center in particular is very heterogeneous.
That's
lots
right.
of silicon, lots of different vendors, lots of different trade-offs, lots of diverse silicon that needs to be programmed. Right, so if we can have a unified platform, we can enable that.
Thank you. Is there a risk that AMD or NVIDIA will block Mojo now that it's Qualcomm owned?
I'll take this one. So I can't speak on behalf of NVIDIA or AMD here. That wouldn't be appropriate. They remain very strong partners for us, right? And so this is something that I think that lots of folks benefit from an open platform. They both contribute an incredible amount to open source code. And so I don't expect there to be any problem here. In fact, a lot of the NVIDIA and AMD bring up we did was without direct help. The relationship obviously got much deeper. And so I don't expect that there would be any interruption of service for Max on either of these platforms.
And if I would add one more thing, Chris, just in terms of the feedback that we have received post the announcement has been extremely positive across the entire ecosystem. In fact, if anything, more and more people are curious about how this is going to all come together, but there's actually a sense of excitement rather than a different perspective on it. So I feel like we're exactly on the right track.
Thank you. In what ways has the vision / priorities / roadmap changed as a result of the acquisition?
Maybe I'll take that one because I'll start with in our previous investor days and what we've talked about. So on one hand, the vision that was articulated not just in this investor day but also the one before that back in November of 2024 hasn't fundamentally changed. As Qualcomm, assuming that the question actually starts with the way that Qualcomm is thinking about it, we are in our third generation of the viewpoint of us transforming into a high-performance compute company in addition to having the connectivity pieces associated with it. So that vision and the priorities really haven't changed. On the other hand, what is becoming even more important is we want to scale as much as possible all the way from the edge to data center. That's kind of an important part, by the way. It's not just about 200 kilowatt or 400 kilowatt data center racks, but we actually have an entire portfolio that starts at liquid cooled racks, air cooled servers, accelerator cards, down to automotive platforms, PCs, XR, and handsets, and going into the lower end of IoT into wearables as well. So in that sense, it is probably the broadest tech/product portfolio that you see. So in terms of scaling that, what we feel is this is an inflection point for us in terms of the software that scales accordingly, because in literally every single product line, we have a healthy emphasis of AI-based solutions coming in with the processes underneath. But we wanted a kind of a software that can scale very well across all these products. So in that sense, what has changed is our own recognition, and kind of moving forwards into physical AI as well, our own recognition that we need a very compelling software roadmap that actually goes with what we have historically done with our hardware perspective as well. And I think that's probably the one subtle shift that we definitely talked about at our Investor Day, but you will see that moving forwards.
Yeah, I can jump in too. I think, from Chris and my perspective and the Modular team's perspective, I mean, our vision had always been outside of, a unified compute platform for the world, how can we go faster? And I think for us, it's about distributing our technology globally as quickly as we can, right? We've always believed in this heterogeneous future. I think that is more true today than ever, not only in the disaggregation on inference, where you see multiple accelerators now being paired between prefill and decode, but also just generally the comeback of CPUs and the importance of CPUs for agentic related workloads. I think the other thing that we that maybe not everyone knows is that Chris and I also have a long history in edge too. We've worked on edge compute both between Apple and then actually even on TensorFlow Lite way back at Google, where we collaborated on a lot of things with Qualcomm as well. So the future of superintelligence being cloud to edge has always been something that I think we've been very excited about. I think in the next few years, you will see that proliferate much faster. And for us, it's about riding that as quickly as we can, so that as many developers and enterprises and partners around the world can use our infrastructure. And that's what we're really excited about. I mean, we did this because we thought it would supercharge the rate at which we could move, support, and grow with the community. And I think, to Durga's point, I think it, the pairing made a lot of sense to us as we, began to meet the Qualcomm team a lot more. And we already had a long relationship, but we throughout this period, it's been a pretty incredible and exciting time.
Yeah, well, and that's feedback we've gotten from the community as well, right? So a lot of people are excited about on-device execution and laptops and things like this. We've done some hobby projects, like an intern project to add, GPU support, but really now this becomes something we can invest in because it actually makes sense instead of just being a hobby. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome, thank you. Will modular support be extended for Adreno GPU?
So see, Aditya, you're putting me in this uncomfortable place because this is not a product announcement kind of live stream. We do have a big event next week, if you hadn't heard, and so there could be some announcements there that might be really, really, really interesting, particularly if you want to go to new kinds of hardware. And so I will be very evasive on this and just not answer this question, but you should totally check out ModCon next week.
Yes, the URL for ModCon is, glowing by on the bottom of the screen. If you are not in San Francisco, we also have a live stream as well, which is linked on that page if you just grab that URL. Will Modular have automatic tensor program generation module to find efficient kernels? Will mega kernels be something on the horizon?
So we're continuing to invest in the core technology platform. Mega kernels are super cool, particularly for low latency kind of use cases and things like this. And so we have a big, long technology investment, new programming APIs, mega kernels are things that we're playing with. And so we haven't quite found the right solution that we're happy with to scale, but but yeah, it did. Yeah, we continue to invest in all this kind of stuff. So, and we do auto tuning. All this kind of stuff is part of the platform for sure. I'll also share, just give you my personality that some of you may have figured out, is that I can be happy with something and that it's like kind of good enough, but it's not great. And so until it's great, I will keep pushing. And so we need to continue not just be happy with a little bit of auto tuning here or there, or the ability to write kernels, but we need to push for true excellence. And particularly in this space where there's so much hardware, so much diversity, like just having a demo is very different than having something that you can scale. And that's the difference for me.
What is Mojo's future? How will Mojo have an impact on Snapdragon products?
Yeah, maybe I'll take one stab at it. So for those of you who are familiar with the way that we described our AI stack, so today what we offer, by the way, when you specifically talked about Snapdragon products, just keep in mind that our objective is to scale the entire modular stack across all of our product lines. So Snapdragon is the customer-facing one or the consumer-facing one. We have Dragonwing and Dragonfly. Dragonwing is a B2B portfolio, and Dragonfly is what goes into data centers. So I'll actually speak about all three of them. So with our existing stack right now, I talked briefly earlier about we have to make sure that we support every framework and runtime, and it also is OS agnostic. In other words, it has to scale across all the operating systems. But in addition to that, we have today, what we also offer is a bunch of tools, compilers, debuggers, profilers, and so on, which actually go with that. What you will expect to see as you go forwards is that into our portfolio. And again, I don't want to jump the gun, as Chris mentioned earlier. Stay tuned for ModCon. I think this is a recurring theme that you'll see throughout this, but you will see that coming up, sooner than you expect. But you want to actually start bringing it in as fast as possible, because we really want developers to adopt our platforms in a way that makes it very easy for them to write apps and agents on top of it. So, in terms of having an impact, one of the KPIs that we'll be monitoring very closely is how easy it is for developers to start building their apps and agents on top of our platforms. That is the one thing that we'll be monitoring very closely, and it'll be one key thing that we'll talk about. So you will see a lot of emphasis on developer onboarding and model onboarding and things of that sort. So that's where we are heading. When you talk of Mojo's future, that's exactly the direction that we're going towards.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you can expect is that Mojo will go everywhere, right? And so this is something we'll continue to invest in. Max will get a lot more capabilities. It will scale up and down. And so any individual announcement has to wait to the right time, but that's the intent, right? And so to a certain extent, this is bringing back Tim's point. This is why we were so excited to join, right? Is that AI is moving so fast. Developers are moving so fast. We want to have an impact, bigger, bolder, faster. And so this is the opportunity to scale.
Thank you. Is there a plan to open source Max?
Tim, you want to take this one?
I mean, I'm gonna. I think if you tune in next week to ModCon, you'll be pretty excited again about our plans here. So I know there's a lot of questions about where we're headed and everything. I think the roadmap related questions, a lot of those are going to be answered in literally a bit over a week from now, and you'll get a lot more insight. I think you'll be very excited about the posture and where we're headed with both Max and Mojo. Yeah, I think that's probably where I'll stop. To preserve a whole bunch of stuff for next week. That's the only reason. Otherwise, we would, I think post ModCon, maybe we'll do another one of these, and then we can probably have a much bigger set of answers for everyone. But given we're only a week away from the event, we do want to keep some things up our sleeve. So hopefully that teases you enough.
Well, let me tease a little bit more, and I'll share some of our problems. So Modular is 4.5 years into building an amazing R&D tech platform, right? And one of the superpowers of the platform, which you'll learn about next week, is that we can bring up and enable new kinds of hardware very rapidly. And we've done that in a very kind of a closed way, because we want to make sure that we get the technology to be good, and that I want to make sure that it's built the right way before scaling it. But we've always had this problem of lots of hardware startups and lots of other people have always come to us and said, hey, please help us. And to date, we've always said no. We've only been able to work with the biggest players in the industry. And that's been the right thing for focus and proving and validating technology stack. But we do need to turn a corner. We do actually need to open up Max, and doing so will be a huge benefit to everybody in the industry, but it's also going to be a great leadership position. So as Tim says, stay tuned. We have some cool things coming.
And register for ModCon.
Or the live
stream.
stream.
Register for the live stream. We don't have too much space, but
Yes. Is the Mojo compiler on track to be open sourced?
I will. So the answer is yes. We've committed to open sourcing the Mojo compiler and the whole tool chain in 2026. So we still have a few months to go. We have an event next week that'll be pretty cool, and so you should definitely tune into that. I'll blow one surprise though. Tomorrow on August 11th will be the launch of Mojo 1.0. So that'll be a very exciting and very cool thing. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff all coming together. The team is cranking away, and I'm very excited about the quality of the release and what it means as, 1.0 is the start of an amazing thing, right? So there's a lot more room to grow, but the team's done a really good job, and I'm very excited about that release.
How will Qualcomm and Modular help large enterprises by delivering a dedicated full-stack private inference solution?
That's an important question, by the way. Maybe we'll tag team on this one, Chris, and I'll start first, and then you can chime in. When you think of a dedicated full stack inference solution, that means you need like not just the SoC layer or just like bits and pieces of the software layer, but you need actually the whole thing. So from our standpoint, keep in mind, you need to have like a turnkey solution that comes in. So in addition to the hardware layer, it's the full stack that comes in, but also with the right set of knobs for the developers to be able to tweak and then write their applications on top of it. So clearly, as you get closer and closer to the hardware, like at the Mojo and the Max layers, there's enough tools over there for the developers to jump in all the way. But we haven't talked a whole lot more about the modular cloud, which is the interface through which they come in. That is a very key part. I mean, as a developer, for instance, I might not, and maybe I'll say a couple of words on this. When you meet some of the developers, there are different kinds of developers. There are those who go all in terms of they want to go to the very last millijoule of optimization, and that's like one category of developers. And then you have the other category, which is like they live in a different world altogether, where they might not really care about the nitty-gritty details of the hardware and maybe not even go all the way down and tweak everything, but rely upon everything to work, but simply focus on the use case and run the app and the agent or build the apps and the agents that they want to do. So we want to allow for both these kinds of developers to come in. And I think that's where the modular stack fits in very nicely with what we currently have, complementing all the existing solutions. So maybe, Chris, you want to chime in a little bit further?
Yeah. I'll actually hand it to Tim. He's the expert here.
Yeah, so to Durga's point, I think, probably most of the community knows us strongly for Mojo and Max, but what you will increasingly start to see is Modular does actually have a very sophisticated cloud product too. And so part of what we've been building over the last 4.5 years isn't just, the low level substrate of Mojo and Max. It is also a very sophisticated distributed cloud architecture. We'll obviously have a lot more to say about this next week. I know we keep referring to it, but there will be some pretty big announcements, particularly around the cloud infrastructure that will be available next week. Again, when you have a unified compute platform that can run across different vendors' silicon, so both NVIDIA, AMD, and others, many developers, to Durga's point, want to enter that from an endpoint solution so that they can essentially just start grabbing tokens and serving those tokens at a relatively cheap rate. We clearly want and are already, although we haven't been as public about it as others, we are already playing in that space quite significantly. And we have some real innovations that we want to be able to share with the world again next week. I think you will want to tune in for that, because I think you'll be pretty excited about where we're headed, and I think the roadmap will become a lot more obvious on in that regard. I think you should increasingly think of modular, and we do say this on our website, kernel to cloud. And what that really means is we have built a fully vertically integrated AI stack. So it is not just about low-level programming languages and a serving library and modeling authoring library in Max. it extends all the way up through to very large disaggregated infrastructure that we've been working on for some time. And so will we, the question asked, will we be able to help large scale enterprises and data center operators? I would say that we'll be able to more than help those folks, and we're excited to really begin to play in that space very significantly. And I think next week we'll begin to showcase just how much progress we've made in that space. So please, again, this is like the 100th call out we've made. Please tune into the live stream, but particularly on that point, on the cloud infrastructure point, you'll hear a lot about that next week.
Yeah, and I'll just bring it back to Durga's point, which is a traditional enterprise doesn't really care or shouldn't have to care how the hardware works, right? You want choice, you want TCO, you want your experts to be able to go fully roam the stack and be able to get the most out of your workload, get the most out of the silicon. But this is what we've been building to for quite some time. And so when you talk about roadmap change, it's very funny. ModCon's been planned by us for, I don't know, Tim, 6 months now or something.
Yeah, at least.
Well before the acquisition. And so this has always been a huge inflection point where we're launching an entire new generation of technology. And so the story will all make sense next week. It'll be very, very, very exciting.
Amazing. This seems like a question geared at Chris. Do you see opportunities for programming language designers? And if yes, what specific areas of the ML ecosystem should they design for?
I think this is a more general question, but I'll start first with Mojo. So allegedly, Modular is going to open source the Mojo compiler in the next few months. And so when this happens, the world will get the first designed for MLIR programming language and compiler that I think has ever existed, at least that's this sophisticated. And so that's a huge opportunity to bring new ideas in, explore with hardware. There's tons of different things that can be done in the space. And Mojo is not done yet. There's a lot of features that will be added and go into that. Now, one of the challenges that open sourcing anything has is that the community is often much bigger than the team that's supporting it. And so we'll have to figure out ways to balance that. But that is itself a pretty big opportunity. But Aditya, I think you're asking about a more general question of, is our programming languages cooked now that AI is writing all the code and things like this? I don't think it is. And I've given my opinion on this many times. I think that code is still quite important because fundamentally we need to be able to reason about what software does. And you need a specification of some sort. And there can be very, very loose specifications, which is cool when you're vibe coding a demo. But if you're building reliable production software and you have things that need to work, then you do need a very detailed specification, and that's basically what code is. And so I think that I'd love to see you and other people explore that. I think there's lots of interesting work on theorem provers. There's a lot of room for us to bring new technologies into the space and up level the expression of the ideas that we all want to embody in code and in products. So long answer, sorry.
Do you have plans to create a compiler that takes PyTorch code and automatically generates Mojo?
Yeah, so this is something that would be really awesome to see. And so if you're not familiar out there, PyTorch can generate Triton code right now, and it uses a compiler called Inductor to do that. So we've not invested in this personally. We have folks in the community out there that have actually integrated Max into PyTorch. We'd love to see this though. And so I haven't personally scoped it. I don't know how much work that would be, but it would be really cool to do that. And so I'm not an expert on Inductor. Would love to see that happen though.
Maybe a question for Durga. What was the major reason for Qualcomm to acquire Modular? Is it to make the ecosystem like CUDA?
So I said a few words earlier about one of the reasons for us to acquire Modular, just in terms of what we're looking in the future and the idea of having a really scalable software platform which is AI native and complements our hardware roadmap in an effective manner. That's one of the reasons. But I think the second part of the question that you asked, is it to make an ecosystem like CUDA? Maybe I'll expand upon it a little bit further. There is that's a very broad philosophical question, like make ecosystem like CUDA, and you have to break it down into what does it actually mean. There is one slide that we actually depicted in our investor day, and Tim actually talked about it just in terms of what does, when you actually talk in terms of like at the CUDA layer, and then you go into the Triton layer and go into like at the cloud layer, exactly what are the similarities and the differences are. But I think The part that's important to understand is if you take a look at today in the overall AI ecosystem, uh, philosophically, there are two approaches. One is a completely vertical solution, which means the hardware and the software, the software only runs on one specific hardware. That's like one philosophical approach. And then the other one is where, no, you want to actually have the software that runs on any kind of a hardware platform that you have underneath. And we are definitely on that second page of making sure that it runs on any hardware. And let me actually break it down a little bit further. If you take a look at, it's easier to start in the data center space because you actually see that quite a bit these days. We're in the midst of this gigantic transition of building racks and platforms which were intended for training and simply reused for inference to something which is specific for inference. And what's actually beginning to happen these days is that within inference itself, there's also some separation of disaggregation of what you do for prefill and what you do for decode. And where does the memory architecture come in? So eventually, if you're in the business of building the rack, you might actually want to say, you know what, I might want a specific compute solution from one vendor. And let me actually take it to an extreme and say, maybe I want the CPU portion of the solution from one vendor. Maybe I want my XPU from a different vendor. And maybe I want my memory architecture from a different vendor. Well, if each of them have their own vertical stacks associated with it, the whole paradigm completely breaks down. And actually, this does allow, therefore, choice for the CSPs as well as they put this together, or those who are in the business of building racks. And that is important as well. So for us, as Qualcomm, I'll just speak about it from Qualcomm, but I see that from Modular. From Qualcomm side, we've always been a believer in terms of this horizontal platform. Just make the customers make the choices, but we provide the ability for them to make those choices. And I think for us, that was like a singular important thing as we were looking at Modular. Apart from the fact that there's also been some proven track record. In fact, one of the KPIs that was shown at our investor day was, it actually runs on other platforms as well. Ironically, one of the questions that I'm beginning to see over here, I understand it works on everything else, but does it also run on Qualcomm, which is kind of ironic in its own way. But the truth is, that's what makes it powerful. That's what we really like. And that's what we envision as a future.
Yeah, and so I think that there's some skepticism about will Qualcomm and Modular actually open source Mojo and things like this. There's nothing that we can say that will convince you. So instead, we should just do it. And then until then, if you're skeptical, remain skeptical. And when we do it, then hopefully you'll give us the credit for actually doing it. And then we'll see how that goes. But when you think about ecosystems, right? Ecosystems require partners. And so CUDA has a number of outbound partners with TensorFlow and PyTorch and VLM and the Neo Labs. And I think that NVIDIA has done a great job with that, and credit to where that is due. I think that what Modular and what Qualcomm are trying to do is we're trying to build an ecosystem of partnerships with other hardware makers, in addition to the frameworks and the Neo Labs and everybody else. And I think that's a structurally different approach. And you can understand that if you understand that Qualcomm builds a ton of hardware. As Durga is saying, it builds CPUs and sells them into racks. It builds memory subsystems. It builds laptops and Snapdragons and like all these different things. And so it's integrated into a tremendous number of different hardware products that you might be experiencing in your lives. You may never know it. And so this partnership approach, I think, is very key, both to Modular from the very beginning, but also to the way that Qualcomm works. And so if you dive in and you kind of mind meld, and I think Durga is certainly the expert here, suddenly you can understand this thinking, right? Is this not about having to monopolize and take over all of the things and control everything? It's really been about choice. It's been about standards. It's been about lifting and building communities that are really focused on excellence of building products, not just trying to take all the money out of every ecosystem. So.
Any plans for extending Mojo/Max for real-time applications like 5G, PHY, radar processing, medical signal processing? Also, any plans to run on Edge platform by Qualcomm, including Arduino-based platforms?
I think we already answered the second part of the question, so I'll answer the first part of the question.
Yeah.
So I don't have any specific plans, but this is where you all people in the community should help. And so, Durga, you probably know way more about radar processing than I do, but the Mojo would be amazing at doing this, but we need y'all to go take Mojo far and wide, everywhere, and tackle these things. And so I think this is something that
I'll
that
say
we
a
can
couple
lean
of
into.
words on it, just in the sense that these days, when we talk of things like radar processing and so on, we don't think of radar processing as a standalone processing in itself. It's one of the modalities that feeds into an existing AI model. Just like it used to be just language, then we added vision, then we added audio, radar, and any other wireless signal just happens to be another modality that comes in. So the short answer for that is, do we have plans for that? Remember what we said earlier about scaling across the entire portfolio. So the shortest answer is absolutely yes. It's all a matter of timing as to when it actually starts showing up. But our objective with Modular Stack is for this to scale across everything. So that includes, therefore, all the way down to some of the aspects that you mentioned.
And maybe just one thing to add there too. I think, and you'll see this in a lot of the releases upcoming, but it's not about just declaring a language 1.0. I think to Chris and Durga's point, there's going to be a lot of tooling and infrastructure that's released as well, particularly around AI skill sets, how this plugs into agentic workflows, how you'll be able to quickly ramp existing models and fill context in the right way, so you can begin to bring up not only things like new silicon, but look at new models, look at new modalities, and be able to plug them into our infrastructure stack faster than probably has ever existed before in history. Certainly for us, building these core platform infrastructure technologies, we want to get that right at the substrate layer so that you can build on top of it, and then what you're building accelerates really quickly. And I think you'll begin to see that, certainly at ModCon, but I think separately over the coming months, I think there'll be a lot we have to say about how our infrastructure plugs in there as well.
Thank you. Do you see Mojo/Max being the replacement or even the upgrade to OpenAI Triton when it comes to writing kernels?
Yeah, so I mean, this is definitely possible. People do this today. We'll have some examples of that next week, of course. Mojo is really great, right? Because when you compare it to something like Triton, Triton is also great, but it's not great for delivering the full performance of the silicon. And so using Mojo to write a kernel is a very natural thing to do. We do that a lot, of course. When you bring in Max, you get the benefit of advanced graph compilers and automatic kernel fusion and that next level up. And so this is something where having that integration between the two is very powerful. This is where Mojo being designed for MLIR is really quite unique. And so we look forward to open sourcing Mojo and continuing to lean into this. But yeah, if you currently use Triton, please check it out. One of the things I'd point out is we have a bunch of GPU programming tutorials online. And so please check those out as well.
Will Mojo/Max finally support training workloads?
You want me to take this, Tim, or you want to talk about this?
You take it, dude. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So yes, Max will eventually support training. We're not currently working on it. We're not announcing it next week. I would guess it's going to be early next year that we'll start a first-class implementation of that. We do have a number of folks that have built training support around Max already in the community. Nabla, for example, the lead author, now works at Modular, by the way. And so this is something that's super important. We want to get a few more pieces in place. So fast eager mode, there's a bunch of different pieces that are landing in the next month timeframe. And so stay tuned for that. There's a lot going on in Maxland, and training is very important. I think this is super compelling for lots of different reasons, but we want to make sure we do it right.
Have AI coding agents changed anything with respect to writing custom kernels and the roadmap for Modular and Qualcomm?
Maybe I'll say a few words about how we are thinking about before the Modular acquisition and how things are going to come in with Modular, and Chris can chime in from the Modular side as well. AI coding agents have certainly changed the way at which the level of deep expertise that you might need. And so one of the things that we definitely have seen is, for instance, the notion of I want to actually build an application, and probably that's what I have in mind. So I live in a certain world. Maybe I live in a PyTorch world. And what I really want is the code to be generated automatically with the application that I have in mind. And that's where the coding agents have become more and more powerful in terms of onboarding of the models and then usage of the platforms for both running apps and testing them before you actually go into commercial mode. So that's a place where you can immediately see some of the changes over there. The other part is there's when you kind of go into this notion of any framework and any runtime and going down into any kind of language over there, the truth is at some point in time maybe you want to actually use the coding agents as much as possible and come in towards the tail end and actually start optimizing from there onwards, so there is a starter code for you. That is certainly a trend line that we have observed. I mean, I certainly have seen that on our Snapdragon portfolio quite a bit. So with Modular coming in, I'll defer to Chris in terms of how this is coming in. But we've actually talked about it, and I can certainly see the value over there too. But go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, well, so I'll take the technical part, and then Tim can double click on the importance. But from a technical point, the question's not really about can you use agents to write code anymore. I mean, I take that for granted. Like, agents are here, they're great at certain kinds of code. The question I ask is, what is the best way to make the agents most effective? And so if you look at our strategy with Mojo and with Max, what we've done is we said, well, agents need data. Let's open source nearly 1 million lines of Mojo code. Well, suddenly you have not just some code, but you have consistent, curated, maintained code that's following best practices. This is actually a pretty big deal, particularly when you're talking about accelerators. And we look at some of the hardware we're launching next week. These don't always have large amounts of example code that the AI can learn from. And so by pulling that together, by having a modern language, by making it so that the code is portable, suddenly you can get both the benefit of having a lot of training set that runs on, for example, NVIDIA GPUs, but then also that scales to other platforms. And this is something that's very unique. This is something that's very, very different about our approach. And one of the benefits of co-designing the language with the abstractions, with the ecosystem, and then open sourcing a tremendous amount of code that makes it possible to access new chips. But Tim, do you want to talk about why it's important? And
yeah, I think there's a few aspects to this question too. I think we speak with a lot of folks in the industry who obviously write kernels. They're using AI to do it. I think increasingly, the modern AI, particularly inference stack, is not just about fast kernels. It's now a full stack solution. You need every part of the stack to be optimized. Increasingly, there is an enormous amount of work being done on quantization, speculative decoding, disaggregated infrastructure, and so you really want to look at it as a more full stack optimization process rather than just I've been able to generate a very single fast kernel and that's helped me. So that's one thing. I would say to what Chris and Durga said too. I think there is, and I'll make a statement, and you don't have to agree, but I think there's also a bit of a fallacy in the industry that like magically AI is just going to write all the kernels for all the silicon and solve all our problems. The practical reality of maintaining and building production quality software across different vendor infrastructure is incredibly hard, even with AI. You have CI infrastructure, you have benchmarking infrastructure, you have tracing and profiling infrastructure. You need to do this across multiple pieces of silicon for production workloads. That is not an easy undertaking. And we knew this years ago from the work that we've been doing at Google and other places. And so I do think that AI is there to help, and we want to enable our infrastructure to utilize it to help every developer in the world move faster. I think a lot of what we're trying to do is to say, look, bet on our infrastructure stack. It's going to enable portability. It's going to enable you to have a single tool chain to develop on. We want to naturally enable all silicon to do that. That is how we benefit. We strongly believe that the future is heterogeneous by nature. By design, therefore, we need to support lots and lots and lots of different silicon. But I just want to make it clear that the idea that it's easy, we bring up a kernel and that solves large scale LLM inference or even small model inference. I just don't necessarily agree that that's a true statement. What you'll see from us is continue to invest in production quality infrastructure that you can run agents on, and you will see incredible outcomes as a result. That is what the commitment that we're making, and you'll hear a lot more about that next week at ModCon 2.
Will Mojo 1.0 be forward compatible with Mojo 2.0?
Yeah, so here's the way to look at it. So first of all, we have no plans for Mojo 2.0, but you'll start to see a long series of 1.x releases. So we're not going from 1.0 to 2.0 next month. There's a long, big space to build into new features, new capabilities, bring to new hardware, et cetera. What you'll see and what Mojo 1.0 signals is that we're moving from a just like move fast, break all the things all the time with no remorse mode, which we've been in. If you've been with us for some time, you've probably suffered a bit for that, to managing more like a modern, like a mature programming language like C++. Now, C++, if you think about it, they've added new keywords, they've added new concepts, they've broken code, but the compiler phases it in. And so it gives you the ability to adopt something when it makes sense instead of just being broken on a daily update. Now, 1.0 is still, again, the first of the 1.x. And so not all the APIs are stabilized. We have more work to be done there. But it's really this commitment that we are going to be actually actively managing stability. And so we're not planning a 2.0 that will break everything or something like that. We want an ecosystem that works together.
Awesome. Thank you. This next one is a little too long for me to put as a banner, but what are the plans for Qualcomm's current offerings, such as QIRT, and AI Hub, Quart? That's how you say it. I'm learning. How will Modular fit with the rest of Qualcomm's current software stack?
Yeah, that's a couple of questions over there, but just in terms of the nomenclature itself, so Quart is something that we had built in-house just for a native application that runs on our. It started off with the NPU and it kind of gradually expands from there onwards. It's a far more native access, primarily intended for the first-party OEMs who have like a total understanding of all the way down to the hardware layer. And then the AI Hub was the first time that we started talking in terms of third-party developers, the ability to load any model with one click from many of the existing repos, like say Hugging Face, and then use a device cloud. Basically, it's like a device farm where you might want to actually write your applications and test them before you commercially deploy that. And if you kind of think about what I just said, you can immediately see that there is a mapping to that towards what Modular has to offer as well. I mean, in terms of the AI Hub, the equivalent of that would be what I would call as Modular Cloud, which basically is the developer-facing interface. And the fact remains that at our Investor Day, we actually alluded to Hugging Face. That was actually an announcement that we made over there. We didn't go too much into the detail right after that, but we said a couple of things. One, we want to make sure that developers have full flexibility in terms of picking any model from the 3+ million models that exist there, and then be able to load that model onto any of our platforms and make it run efficiently so they can actually just focus on the apps and agents. And in fact, we specifically said Modular will have a role over there as well. In fact, Modular already is a part of what is currently, if you go through the Hugging Face website, you see that. So if you start putting all these pieces together, here's the way to actually look at it. Modular is a full-fledged stack right now. We want that stack to run on all the platforms that we have. Okay, that's one step. AI Hub today focuses on some specific ways of doing that. Modular then becomes another part of that, which still remains as a repo. But at the same time, we have our agreement that's coming up with Hugging Face, the one that we announced, where developers will start getting exposed directly to Modular and be in a position to actually use it for all the platforms that we have. And this goes all the way from data center racks to all the other devices that we are talking about. So in that sense, you will see the following sequence of events. And maybe I'll say a couple of words as to what's after ModCon, which is not that far off. I'm sure you're actually registering for it. But right after ModCon, as you kind of look ahead, we have another event that comes in towards the end of September. It's called Snapdragon Summit. And you will see more announcements coming along that way. So stay tuned on that as all these pieces come together. We made a big splash announcement at our Investor Day, and now you are seeing the unpacking of all of that. What does it mean over the next 6 weeks or so? So stay tuned is what I'll say, but there's a lot more that's coming even beyond ModCon.
It's funny how impatient we all get. The acquisition just closed last week or something, so
it feels like an eternity.
Time flies. It does, yes.
considering how challenging and sticky the current ecosystem is, even AMD and Intel are struggling to break the NVIDIA hegemony. How do you plan to make the software ecosystem get to maturity parity?
Well, so I'll take this. It's a very strategic difference, right? So if you look at what traditional GPU makers do, is that they try to copy CUDA. And if you look at CUDA is a 20-year-old technology. It's kind of an aircraft carrier full of random stuff that's been accumulated for years and years and years. And so what that means is that it's a very sticky technology. Lots of things are stuck onto different parts of CUDA, but it also means it's very difficult to copy. If you remember back in the days, there was Windows, and then there was a Linux version of Windows called Wine. And Wine tried to copy all the APIs that exist in the Windows ecosystem, and it was never as good. Sometimes you got some things to work, which was great, but it was never the same, right? And so the approach we're taking is different. We're saying, look, Gen AI is new. CUDA was never designed for Gen AI. Tensor cores are new. CUDA was never designed for tensor cores. There's heterogeneous hardware. There's the data center problem. There's disaggregation. There's this entire stack around inference that's super important. Let's be the best at that. And so let's not try to worry about physics simulations or rendering triangles. Mojo can also be used for that, but let's tackle that ecosystem problem, and let's build the world's best version of that and make it relevant to enterprises. And so this is where, when you talk about modular cloud, when you talk about the problems that enterprises are facing, a lot of them, they don't care about CUDA. They don't care about these software platforms. What they care about is the numbers of tokens a minute they can get. They care about the cost. They care about the choice of hardware. This is what they fundamentally care about. And this has shaped and informed modular strategy from the very beginning. Now, I think we're all smart enough to understand that this is still a huge problem, right? And so this is where bringing in partners, bringing in support for the ecosystem, building an open source community, this is where you get scale. And so to date, we've always been holding back a bit. So we haven't open sourced the Mojo compiler. Well, why? Well, because we haven't hit 1.0. And I didn't want to scale Mojo before we hit 1.0 because I didn't want a bunch of people to write a whole bunch of code and then have us break it and then be grumpy at us. We went through that with Swift years ago. So what we're doing is we're taking a very methodical approach to get to 1.0, open source it shortly after that, scale the ecosystem, be good partners in the industry. And this is how we think that we can actually help lift not just one piece of software, but an entire ecosystem of people that are trying to build solutions into AI and hopefully make the entire flywheel go faster than it's even going now.
Thank you. Can you get us a sense of when we will see the cross-compilation story matured? I want to replace the Rust components in my cross-platform app with Mojo, but I need macOS/Windows/Linux/iOS/Android.
This is directly correlated to Mojo open source. And so the problem that we've always had is, the challenge we've always had is that Mojo is extraordinarily capable of doing lots of crazy things. We have internal prototypes with WASM and with all kinds of different really cool things, but we've never been able to validate, CI, verify, and provide them as like reference production quality software that we can maintain and ship, right? And so seems like we should open source this thing someday, and then you can go build all the crazy wacky things you want to do, and then we don't have to stand up and provide support for it. And so I think that's what we're very excited to see, and I think the potential energy within Mojo is just incredible. And so we need to do a few more things. We need to get things ready. We need to get the open source world set up. But once that's ready to go, we will definitely tell you about it.
To some of this, the answer is tune in to ModCon, join the live stream, come and hear all of the things that are being unveiled next week. But I think we can at least speak to the developer trust side of this. So you say Macs must open and Mojo's toolchain will be open sourced in 2026. What stays closed, and how can developers trust that Qualcomm won't change the rules?
Maybe I can take that one over here. As Qualcomm, whenever we've said anything publicly, we've kind of stuck to it. So you should actually trust us on that one. And I think the facts will speak for themselves as we go forwards. I did mention earlier that right after we made the announcement, we got a lot of good positive feedback from everyone else out there in the ecosystem. And that was kind of encouraging for us as well. We have a long history of working with some of those partners, and it was kind of really nice to see that, hey, we articulated our plans. We said we're going to keep it open, and they really liked it. So yes, the facts will speak for themselves, but I'm actually looking forward to it. So just trust us. But yes, we'll prove it to you.
Yeah, I put it in the same category as Mojo open source. So we've been very consistent. We've said that we're progressively opening Mojo. We said that we'll open source the compiler in 2026. And some people have believed in us and have been part of our journey, and that's awesome, and we love you. Other people have been the haters that say, oh, well, I'm never going to use something unless it's open source. And I say, okay, then it's our burden to prove to you that we're going to open source it. And you know, depending on where you are, there's no words that will convince you. And so we don't try, but we do want to do things the right way. And I think the North Star has always been do things the right way, be good to the people that are good to you. And I think that you'll see that. And I think that, you know, coming back to the point, we do need to earn trust, and we'll do so one step at a time.
Thank you. Mojo was created on the belief that DSLs are not enough, but DSLs like tiling, cute DSL keep performing in production. In your view, what's needed to bridge that gap? Collaborating with Neolabs?
Well, so I could take this. So I've never made the statement that DSLs can't work. DSLs are definitely a valuable thing. There's a whole bunch of them. Triton, for example, there's many of these things. The challenges with them are always the developer experience. And so often if you're using one of these tools, you make a mistake and you're staring at an MLIR dump. Or you try to load the NVIDIA Insight Profiler and it's just like, what the heck is going on? What happened to my code? And you can't reason about it. And so, or you can't get the performance out of the hardware, or again, you have to have a compiler engineer on staff to get the thing to work. There's lots of downsides of them, but they do work and they are valuable. They're an important part of the ecosystem. And so our goal is not to say that those things are terrible. Our goal is to try to build the next thing that's better, right? And I think this is where, again, I bring back to the team the culture of excellence. Like, what is the best thing that we can build that way makes people the most happy, the most productive, and go. And because we use the tools internally, this is really important to us as well. And so this is really the North Star for Mojo. And if you like Triton, if you like these other ecosystems, then please do use them, right? There's nothing, we're not anti other tools. We're just trying to, like anybody, trying to build a better mousetrap.
On the topic of excellence, we are hiring. Check out our career site. How will you lure the best of the best data center engineers to join Team Qualcomm?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll say a few words, and Chris, feel free to chime in on that one. You know, keeping in mind that as we entered the data center business and we talked about our CPU portfolio, memory, AI inference accelerator, and we also made some acquisitions along the way prior to Modular, including one of the RISC-V companies. We now have a pretty strong portfolio, and there is a momentum that we are building towards this. So the question of how will you lure? I think one thing that has happened is that there is a sense of excitement in terms of what we are doing in this space. There are questions in terms of, hey, can you actually, the software ecosystem seems to be pretty diverse right now, but with Modular, can you actually prove it? I think here's the way to look at it. If you're really looking for an exciting challenge and what we are doing, we are taking on a lot of things over here. Come join us. This is exactly what we are looking for. And this is not the time where you actually second guess yourself and think about what is it that you cannot do. But if you think it can be done, just join us. We'll figure it out along the way as we go with that. But what's happened in the last 1.5 to 2 years is that there's a lot of people out there who are interested in being a part of this journey that we articulated at Investor Day. So that's what we are really looking for. And it goes one step at a time, one person at a time, and one company at a time. So go ahead, Chris. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, so what I would say is that Modular has always been in the position of being challenged because we have only so many numbers of open positions. We have a lot of applicants. And so our challenge is always finding the best people, building the best team, and we want a culture of excellence within the team. So a couple of things shift, right? So we now have the ability to grow our team to bigger size than we were able to before. And so we can hire more people, which is cool. But we want to maintain that high bar. And so we're still going to be looking for the best people, and the positions shift, and we're building a team. We're not just hiring a bunch of humans and hoping they do work. one of the things I'll share is that since the acquisition was announced, is that the pipeline, the number of applicants, has just significantly grown. And so I think that whether it be people concerned about a startup and whatever happens with it financially versus being at a big company, I think some people really do prefer big company support and the feeling of stability. And so I'm very excited about this. We will remain very focused on building the best team. If you're interested, we are actively hiring. We'll have even more posts coming up over time. And so please do check out our careers page.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll probably add one thing, sorry, just to at the end. I mean, I think we, to what Chris and Durga said, I mean, we're innovating as well now at every level of the stack. And I think if you are excited about programming languages, if you're excited about compiler technologies or serving technologies or disaggregated infrastructure, even training and beyond, agentic infrastructure, I mean, every one of these problems we're tackling as an organization, and we're scaling very quickly. I would also say that it's true also outside of engineering. We obviously want to continue to build an amazing engineering team, but we are hiring product managers, we are hiring go-to-market people, we are hiring designers. I mean, you name it, we are scaling really quickly. And so if any of those areas are also areas that you're interested in, please don't be shy reaching out. I think we try to make ourselves as available as possible on LinkedIn, our emails, community events, Discord, you name it, forum. You should be able to reach out to us, and we'd love to talk to you.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you all so much. A huge thank you to Chris, Tim, and Durga for answering all of these questions today. We got so many questions in the chat across all these different platforms. We couldn't possibly answer all of them today. So if you did ask a question and we didn't get to it, I'm very sorry. We tried to do a nice mix of questions from everywhere, but we will follow up with you async to make sure you get an answer there. And again, for the 100th time, modular.com/modcon. Please tune in to the live stream next week where we will have many exciting announcements. Tim is laughing. It looks like he wants to say something.
It's going to be epic. Please. I know we've said it so many times across this, to everyone's point, we talk the talk. I think you'll see it's when we walk the walk. And so that's when you should, that's why we're so excited for you to tune in. So please do that.
Heterogeneous Compute now has a software platform.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All righty. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for all the questions.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome.
See you next week.
Bye.